perspective on sports. It's Brian here inside the ARM Media Solutions Studios on this Wednesday, June the 17th, 2026. Hope you're happy, hope you're healthy, hope you are well, wherever it is you may be listening. Thank you so much for doing so and for being part of the show. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for doing so. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, good evening. Welcome in. We are so glad to have you as a part of the show. Thank you so much for doing so. All right, if you are with us on social media, you can check us out on X or on Twitter and Twitter Live or X Live at Last Row Podcast. If you're with us on TikTok at last.row.podcast, you can check us out there. Make sure you follow us on our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com. That is where you can find all the links to our sponsors, including I Know a Guy Remodeling, as well as Forever Finds Thrift. Thank you so much for doing so. Okay, well, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it and kick in here. Here we go. So, let's talk here about a few different things. First and foremost, you've got the New York Knicks championship parade tomorrow. And lo and behold, there's going to be multiple, for lack of a better term, multiple different law enforcement agencies that are going to be on standby tomorrow, ready, willing, and able, because this is going to be one of the biggest parties or parades, whatever you want to call it, within the greater New York metropolitan area. And they are absolutely getting jacked up for tomorrow. And quite honestly, look, they deserve it. And they're going to be 10,000 officers to safeguard the parade tomorrow, per ESPN News Services, as well as in conjunction with the AP. This story emanates from. And that's going to be this. The victory parade for the NBA champion New York Knicks in Manhattan on Thursday will be safeguarded by 10,000 members of the New York Police Department, the largest number of police officers ever assigned to a planned event, the department said Wednesday. The security follows the chaotic street celebration and incidents of violence during the Knicks' run to the championship over the Spurs. Contingent will include heavy weapons teams, explosive detection, canines, transportations, transit, highway aviation, drones, and more, according to the police. The parade will kick off at 10 a.m. near Bowling Green, a park near New York's financial district. The route will continue north along Broadway until it reaches City Hall, where Mayor Mondami will present the Knicks the keys to the city. This route is known as the Canyon of Heroes for its history as the setting of ticker tape parades. From a playoff run that left New Yorkers breathless to a tip-in that will be talked about for decades, the Knicks have earned a hero's welcome, Mondami said in a news release on Tuesday. We have dreamed of this moment for generations. This Thursday, our city will rise to the occasion. Knicks legend Walt Clyde Frazier, a member of two of the 1970s championship teams, and Patrick Ewing are expected to be in the parade, a source told the AP. Mike Breen, the Knicks play-by-play announcer on MSG as well as on ESPN, is set to MC the City Hall ceremony. Alicia Keys, the singer who joined with Jay-Z on the 2009 hit Empire State of Mind, has been tapped to perform. In the hours after the Knicks win on Saturday, 63 people were arrested and at least 10 members of the NYPD were injured amid victory celebrations within the city. Thursday's ticker tape parade for the new NBA champs will be a first. When the team first won the title before in 1970 and then 73, it was not honored with New York's signature procession. Now, along that, you had the Knicks Victory Tour following their first NBA championship since 1973 made a short stop, no pun intended, on Wednesday night when Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart threw out the ceremonial first pitches at Yankee Stadium. This was before the Yankees played the White Sox and completely crushed the White Sox, to be completely honest with you. Look, the Knicks right now are absolutely the talk of the town, right? They are the cat's pajamas, the cat's meow, whatever you want to call it. They are absolutely looking at being the talk of New York and Manhattan. And it's going to stay that way realistically until we get to the, for lack of a better term, until we get to the NFL season. Unless the Yankees somehow or another put together a massive run here to go to a World Series. But we're still a few months away from that. Let's just be honest here. So, within that realm of possibility, you have the New York Knicks, who right now are the kings of the NBA. The Knicks are the talk. And the Knicks absolutely have the world on a string. And again, they are going to be honored with this ticker tape parade tomorrow. Millions are going to be in the crowd. I don't believe there's going to be any question about that. And this is something that Knicks fans, and quite honestly NBA fans, have been waiting for 50 plus years. And the Knicks have all attention on them. And rightfully so. They deserve it after their fantastic run over the last month or so. So with that being said, the Knicks are going to have their parade tomorrow with Walt Clyde Frazier and Patrick Ewing included in the parade. On top of that, look, you had America dialed in. Let's just call it what it is here. The Knicks Spurs was the most watched NBA Finals since the Bulls' last run in 1998. You had almost 21 million viewers on average watching this. And look, I think it's safe to say that you have a number of people, including, Americans here, that are realistically intrigued by what the Knicks did. And America wanted to see New York win, I think. The other part of this, too, that I truly think is not being talked about enough is the Victor Wembanyama villain story, an origin story, that we talked about here on this show. Wembanyama is playing the part, very, very well, mind you, of the villain. Wemby is playing the heel very well. Russell, good evening. And Gobbler, good evening. And within that thought process of Wembanyama being the villain, he has gone from this lovable Frenchman that people didn't know a whole lot about except the fact that he was going to be the number one pick overall in the draft and he was really, really good. The fact that they, or he now, is more of a villain because of how he played, that speaks volumes. And that is absolutely incredible. And again, without question, Wemby is leaning into that. And I believe, and this is just me, I believe that Wemby has, without question, embraced that role as the villain. And I think he should. I absolutely feel like he should. Wemby is, again, the you want to root for the guy, but he plays such a way that absolutely makes it very easy to root against. And so I think for the NBA right now, you look back at in the 90s, you had the bad boy Detroit Pistons, right? And you had Dennis Rodman, TikToker, good evening. You had Dennis Rodman and, Rick Mahorn and those guys. And then as we got towards the mid 90s, you had, and I don't even want to call him a villain per se because he wasn't a villain really, but you had Reggie Miller like that. You had, Shaq leaving Orlando. Football Talk, good evening, welcome. Victor, good evening, welcome. You had Shaq kind of with that when he left Orlando. Charles Barkley really wasn't a villain necessarily, but then you go to the 2000s and you had LeBron, right? So now Victor Wembanyama is the latest, if you want to call him villain, that you have. And Wemby is embracing it, I think. And Wemby is going to absolutely lean into that role, in my opinion. And when he does, he is absolutely going to play into that very, very well. Now, look, we've talked about this in the past. If Wembanyama gets any semblance of a post move, if Wemby absolutely gets any type of post move, you've got a really good opportunity here for him to grow his game. But he's got to knock off the dirty plays and the cheap shots. And I think that's the part of it that I think really makes it easy, for lack of a better term, to root against, is the fact that he's become so easy to dislike. And for Wembanyama and for San Antonio, they weren't expecting that. But now they are. And they're all going to embrace that role. They're absolutely all going to embrace that. Blackout Show, good evening. Welcome in. Devlin, good evening. And I just believe that truthfully, you have a number of different players on the San Antonio Spurs that realistically could play that role very, very well. I think Stephon Castle could play it very well as the villain. But Wembanyama, because of his size, because of how he's playing, Bippin, good evening. I think absolutely will fill that role beautifully for the NBA of the villain. Now, the other part of this that we haven't really discussed here recently has been for lack of a better term, the ability for the NBA to capitalize. And we talked about it with the NHL as well. With the Major League Baseball impending lockout. And look, everything that we are seeing right now, everything we're seeing regarding the lockout and what's being offered and what's being talked about, everything regarding this is going to be exactly like 94. And the problem with that, with it being 94 or replicating 94, is you lost a ton of fans at that point. Bippin, we'll get to that here in just a minute, I promise, so stick with us. I truly feel that if this is going to be like a 1994-esque strike, for lack of a better term, lockout, whatever you want to call it, this is going to do so much damage to Major League Baseball. And the NBA, the NHL have an opportunity to truly capitalize on it. Now, I know the NHL is planning more broadcasts of their preseason exhibition games, whatever you want to call it. Which makes sense because, look, come September, October, you have a lull in the action, or where the Major League Baseball playoffs would be heating up. That's going away, right? So now you have a gap or an opening where NBA, NHL, we already know the NFL is going to be there. We already know that. But this is a golden opportunity for the NHL to step up and to get into the opportunity to really become a mainstay here in the U.S. I think it's a really good chance for him. So we'll see. Now, speaking of the NBA, there's a couple of items that I want to touch on here. First and foremost, Trae Young. And Bippin, this is where we come in at. Trae Young has declined the player option for the Washington Wizards. And as you know, Trae Young was dealt last year, mid-year, from the Atlanta Hawks to the Washington Wizards. And realistically, there's been a lot of conversation here and a lot of talk about Trae Young and just what kind of a player he is. And look, he would fit, in my opinion, the Victor Wembanyama role very, very well of being the villain. But he declined his almost $49 million player option and will become a free agent on Monday, sources told Mark Spears on Wednesday. Washington remains the front runner, and I ultimately think he ends up there with a max deal. He's trying to get, he's trying to prove that he was worth that 4-year, $229 million max. But he suffered a sprained right MCL in the 5th game of the season in late October and did not return until December. The Hawks, after his departure, saw Jalen Johnson show up and step up and allow him to be dealt. He played only 5 games for the Wizards, averaging 18 points and 8 assists in 15 games. So, between the Hawks and the Wizards. Now, look, Trae Young, to me, is a really good point guard. He's averaged almost 10 assists over his 8-year NBA career. They also got Anthony Davis and believe that Young and Davis can be, a two-man duo that lead or lift this franchise back to prominence in the Eastern Conference. I don't believe that's the case. Trae Young, if you put a really good defender on him, shuts down. I saw that firsthand in Chicago with Ayo Dosunmu. Dosunmu was incredibly good at frustrating Trae Young to the point where Young started to kind of play a little dirty and would turn the ball over, would realistically just not be good. I mean, he wasn't consistent at that point. So I believe that Washington is still the best location for him. Now, there's going to be turnover amongst all of the different teams in the NBA, including the playoff teams with the Knicks. I think the Spurs. I don't think San Antonio makes a run here, Bip and Adam. But the reason why I bring San Antonio up is because he would play a perfect villain role next to Wembanyama, and it would become very easy to dislike them. But the problem is that San Antonio's young core really is intact. I mean, they're set to go for the next few years. Now, whether or not they are, appreciated, we'll say, is yet to be seen. However, San Antonio's got its own salary cap issues, and it's got its own roster construction concerns. Realistically, Washington is the best option here for Trae Young. And he's going to be looking for a max deal. There's no question about it. Whether or not he gets that max deal, I don't know. But, I mean, you look at what Washington is trying to do there. They're trying to, for lack of a better term, they're trying desperately to build on the possibility, I'm using that term, that possibility of what they could have with Trae Young and Anthony Davis. There's no guarantee. So, for me, Washington makes the most sense. But I don't know necessarily that I would give Trae Young a max deal. I don't believe he's necessarily worth a max deal. Yes, he's averaged almost 10 assists a game. I get that. But you've got, any more in the NBA, you have to have two-way players. You just have to. And if you don't, you're really not paying for much. You're paying for a one-way guy. So my thought process is this. If you have the opportunity to get a two-way player, you do it. And that's what the draft is all about next week. But a one-way player is good, but if they can play a little bit of defense, that's good. Trae Young doesn't play a little bit of defense. That's the problem. He's too small. He doesn't match up well against most guards in the league. And considering the fact that it's a big man's league now, where you have stretch 4 and 5s, the role of the smaller guard is going away. I mean, we're really looking at, you want a guard that's at least 6'5", 6'6". Trae Young is lucky to be 6'1". I mean, let's just call it what it is. And I don't necessarily believe that Trae Young is, I mean, he's not that big of a guy. I mean, 6'2", maybe? I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but he might be. He very well might be. But look, I don't believe that Trae Young is the guy you're going to build a franchise around to win a title. I just don't. He's a nice piece to that, but I don't think that he's the all-star that you build around. I just don't. Victor Wembanyama, absolutely. Stephon Castle, absolutely. Trae Young, no. Modest Buzelis, yes. And we'll talk about the Bulls here in just a minute. But I don't know necessarily if Trae Young is the answer there in Washington. And if he's not, there are other teams that I'm sure would jump on it, but not for the price tag he's going to command. I think he was foolish to turn down his player option for the $49 million. No offense. I'd take half of it. And again, the other part of this too with him, with Trae Young, is whether or not he's going to be healthy. If he's not going to be healthy, that's a huge problem. And anytime you get anytime that you get the opportunity to have a guard that can lead your team, it's a good thing. The problem with Trae Young is I don't believe that he's a leader. I don't believe he's a leader. Now, let's look at the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Bulls today introduced their new head coach in Tiago Splitter. And I have to be honest with you. I wasn't ultimately sure what to expect today in looking at this. I didn't know what to expect. Okay? And realistically, Tiago Splitter, being a former player as he is, and being a very big player as he was with the Spurs, and literally and figuratively, excuse me. He arrived early today to the Berto Center and got to the United Center early to meet with the front office, to talk with them, to lay out what they were looking for in terms of the opening press conference. And he admitted today, Thiago Splitter did, that he was a Bulls fan growing up in Brazil. I watched many games late at night, hidden from my parents at 1 a.m. watching MJ, Michael Jordan, games and rooting for the Bulls, so I'm super excited to be here. Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations, Bryson Graham, introduced Splitter today, and this is per Joe Cowley at the Chicago Sun-Times, as the organization's 25th coach, and did so by first explaining how the month-long process ended with the former Trailblazers interim coach. A process that began with a wide net, involved numerous Zoom calls, whittled down to a final four of Minnesota Timberwolves assistant coach Micah Nori, Atlanta Hawks coach Ryan Schmidt, and in-house candidate Wes Unseld Jr., and then led to the final decision of Thiago Splitter. Graham said, quote, "Couldn't be more excited. He's what we're looking for. Why Thiago? There are many things that we can go into, but the thing that stood out to me, or the things that stood out to me, are that he's smart. He's curious as a coach in a game that's always changing. He wants to get better. He's got the right level of competitiveness, good communicator, connects with players. He's been in the locker room and won at a really high level, and he's got a vision. And that is so important when you're embarking on something like this, because we are at the ground floor. When you're going through a lot of hard times as a coach, whatever, a player, front office staff, you've got to be in the foxhole with someone that you trust. And there's no one more that I want to be in that foxhole with than Splitter. Look, if there's a guy that deserves or that could be in a foxhole with anybody, it's Thiago Splitter. My God, look at the situation he's coming out of in Portland. It was absolutely atrocious. And what he had to deal with in Portland, with the arrest of Chauncey Billups being thrust into the interim coaching role, and then from there, having the ability to connect with the players, having the ability to coach them up and get them into the 7th seed of the playoffs, is absolutely incredible. He refocused a group to be 42-40 and get into the play-in tournament. He beat the Suns in that first game to capture the 7th seed. Along the way, he helped Denny Avdija become the first NBA All-Star, and former number 3 pick Scoot Henderson somewhat resurrect his young career, turning the Blazers into a grinded-out, hard-hat group. Now, I will tell you this. Watching that press conference today, I'm going to say this right here and now. Bryson Graham absolutely won that press conference. And I will say this, if there's a more media-savvy guy that the Bulls have hired, I don't know if there's been anybody other than Bryson Graham here recently. He was very cool, calm, and collected, conducted himself in such a good way today. Opened up the press conference by talking about Stacey King and how Stacey and his family will forever be Chicago Bulls and will forever be entrenched with the Chicago Bulls. And then he went on to talk about what they were looking for in a head coach and how Thiago Splitter matches that. And Splitter did a very good job today, expressing exactly what he's looking for. He said, quote, "It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to take time. I know what it takes, and I know the responsibility that I have and the expectations that come with being the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. I'm ready and cannot wait to start and work. I have a vision. I have a way I want to play, but you also have to explore what they do best. That's what we're going to do here. I can guarantee you one thing. We're going to compete every night, and we're going to have high standards with everything that we do. And look, this is a gutsy, very gutsy hire by Bryson Graham in his first go-around as Bulls general manager, in his first stint here. And the reason why I say that is because of the fact that he is hiring a guy that already has head coaching experience, both in the NBA and across the pond in the EuroLeague. So he comes established. Bryson Graham did not want anybody else. There were 4 finalists, don't get me wrong. Splitter, Norrie, Schmidt, Unseld. Ryan Schmidt was the only other one I thought that would be a good fit. Micah Norrie would be okay. Not going to deny it. But anybody other than Wes Unseld Jr. I felt would be a good hire. Now, in this instance here, Corey, good evening. In this instance, Tiago Splitter is the guy that he wanted. Da Bears, welcome in. We're going to talk about the Bears here in just a little bit. Tiago Splitter, though, realistically, is the guy that I think gives the Bulls the best chance to not only develop this roster, but really tailor this roster to what he's looking for. And I think, honestly, he's going to get the most out of Modest Buzelis that anybody has. I think he's going to develop these guys as a defensive team first, all the meanwhile utilizing their youth and their athleticism to run a really good offense. So, again, I think, just me, that this is going to end up being a really good hire for Chicago. And as much as I wanted Ryan Schmidt, and I did, okay, I truly believe that Splitter answered every question thoughtfully. He showed confidence, authenticity. And look, he brings a number of experiences with him, including an NBA championship. I am right now looking at, and I apologize, I'm looking at footage earlier on from the tornado that passed through a place very near and dear to my heart, Charleston, Illinois, home of Eastern Illinois University, where I went to college. And the damage that was inflicted is pretty incredible. And it's, I'll be honest, it's very difficult to see. Looking at Old Main, the building there in Charleston that has become synonymous with EIU. Eastern is a very special place in my mind and in my heart. It's where I developed into a broadcaster and into a sports personality, where I was fortunate enough to work thanks to EIU at ESPN Radio for my first job out of college. And learned so much from the great people down in Eastern Illinois, from Jack Ashmore and Mike Brad and Jeff Owens and Rob Calhoun and Kevin McDonough in our 3-man booth that we had for Charleston high school basketball games on Vmix 88.9 WEIU. To see what happened down there tonight is just absolutely heartbreaking. And my heart and sympathy and prayers go out to everybody down in Charleston. I'm thinking of you. I will be reaching out to you tomorrow to check on you, to see how you're doing, to see what we can do, if there's anything we can do. All right, let's take a quick time out here so we can hear from our friends over at I Know a Guy Remodeling. And then from there, we will come back. We're going to talk about the Chicago Bears. And we're going to talk about the stadium project as well as minicamp, OTAs, and what we can expect moving forward from Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, and the Chicago Bears. Coming up here on the Last Row Podcast. All right, Last Row Nation. You know how every football team needs a solid offensive line, right? Well, your house needs one as well. And if things are falling apart, I Know a Guy Remodeling is the team you call. Whether it's a bathroom remodel, kitchen upgrade, flooring, drywall, landscape, or finally tackling that home project you've been putting off longer than the Chicago Bears have been looking for consistency at quarterback. Caleb Williams will do it, by the way. These are the guys to trust. The best part? You're not dealing with some giant company where you feel like just another number. You're working with people who care about getting it done right. So before your house starts looking like a team in full rebuild mode, call I Know a Guy Remodeling. Quality work, honest people, and they'll help get your home back into championship form. You can check out a link to their Facebook page on our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com. Because everybody deserves to know a guy. And now you do. I Know a Guy Remodeling. All right, welcome back into the show. Let's talk here for a little bit about the Chicago Bears. And I just want to mention here tonight that there's no real news here on the stadium, except for the fact, and if you're the Bears, this is not an anniversary you really want to celebrate. I'll just be honest with you. But this is the 5-year anniversary of the Chicago Bears purchasing the land in Arlington Heights. And what do they have to show for it? That's right, nothing. Now look, you can blame the politicians in Springfield. You can blame the ownership of the Chicago Bears. You can blame the mayor of Chicago. There's plenty of blame to go around. And we've talked here ad nauseum about what this means for the Bears. The McCaskey family that owns the Chicago Bears, they are the largest landowners right now in Cook County, Illinois, because they own the racetrack at Arlington Heights that was once owned by Churchill Downs. The Bears purchased that land 5 years ago tonight. There has been so much that has gone wrong. From Virginia McCaskey telling Ted Phillips, the former president of the Bears and McCaskey confidant, to buy the land prior to having any type of legislative agreement, any type of financial assurance from the village of Arlington Heights, not having funding secured by the state of Illinois. And then Ted Phillips resigns or retires. And you bring in Kevin Warren, who was known in circles within the league prior to being the president of the Big Ten Conference. He was brought into Minnesota to help create and design and get a new stadium done in Minnesota for the Vikings. Now, if you recall, when Kevin Warren was doing this, there was a press conference on the outskirts of Minneapolis that announced a new outdoor stadium was going to be built. You had Bud Grant out there talking about how the Vikings were going back to the good old days where they would play outside and the weather would be a factor, and it's Vikings weather, so on and so forth. And then what happened shortly thereafter? There was a new proposition, proposal, whatever you want to call it, and there was a new stadium being built in downtown Minneapolis. Now, realistically, there is no way possible that there would be a stadium built in Chicago. There's just not. The Bears own the land in Arlington Heights. Hammond, Indiana, they don't even have a site for yet. That will tell you all you need to know. 330 acres of land in Arlington Heights is more than enough to build an incredible stadium, to then build an entertainment district around that. You have access very quickly to public transportation with the trains, as well as access to the local highways that could lead you back to the city proper of Chicago, as well as the west and northwest and south suburbs. The location that they're looking at in Hammond, which they don't have a site yet, mind you, there's an easement that's done by the Indiana Army Corps of Engineers. That easement states that nothing can be built within that 330-acre golf course until 2050 plus. That means the Bears couldn't open a stadium there until the year 2050 or after. Is that doable for Chicago? No. So therefore, it's my thought, my process, that the Bears are going to end up in Arlington Heights. That somehow, some way, shape, or form, Arlington Heights, despite everything that's happened between the state, between the Bears, between the politicians, between the delays. Again, it's been 5 years. TikToker, I'm assuming you're talking about Indiana versus Arlington Heights. Oh, or you're talking about Soldier Field in Chicago. Soldier Field is the smallest stadium in the NFL, capacity-wise. They don't have... That's the reason why Chicago's never been able to host a Super Bowl there. They only have capacity for 60,000. Minimum requirements now for a Super Bowl are around 70 plus. The Bears don't have that. And they're the third largest media market in the United States. And they can't get a stadium deal done. They can't host a Super Bowl because, well, it's really cold. Number two, they don't have the capacity to do so. That's why, to me, this talk of Arlington Heights and this talk of, building in Indiana, this talk of building in Indiana is just nonsense. Let's just be honest here. It's just absolutely nonsense. While Indiana has come to the table and put a very aggressive offer out there, the state of Illinois needs to step up. And Governor Pritzker, for all of the praise that he gets within the Democratic Party, is a complete and utter buffoon. And he could very easily lose the Chicago Bears to Indiana. And if that happens, that's going to be a massive problem for JB's White House run. TikToker, yeah, Soldier Field on the lakefront's great. The problem is it's too small, there's no parking, and there's no dome. The Bears can't renovate that. The Bears cannot do a thing to renovate that. If they could have, they would have back in 2002 and 3 when they played in Champaign-Urbana during the renovations. And Reagan, I agree with you as well. They're not giving old or cold cities in this instance Super Bowls. The only exception is when you get a new stadium. So therefore, build a domed stadium in Illinois, close to Chicago. Granted, it's 25 minutes to Chicago. Build it there. Fletcher, good evening. Build it in Arlington Heights. You've got access to all the different, public transportation systems. You've got access to all the different hotels, including anything that you build within Arlington Heights. Now, what does this mean in terms of this season for Chicago? Well, I'll say this much. I think the Bears roster is going to be better than it was a year ago. Do I think that the Bears will have a better record? No. Could they equal it? Absolutely. I don't doubt Ben Johnson. After the job he did a year ago with pretty much the same exact roster, he was able to get them to the NFC North title and the divisional round of the playoffs. Reagan, I don't believe the Bears are still firm on Indiana, even with that announcement. Yeah, I don't think that they are either. And Minnesota has only hosted one recently, and their stadium is indoors. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Detroit, Minnesota, and look, they're going to be up for it. I mean, Nissan Stadium in Nashville is going to have a Super Bowl here relatively soon. I think Arlington Heights or Hammond, wherever the Bears end up, I think, again, it's going to be Arlington Heights. That's going to be where they end up. So, again, they'll get a Super Bowl, finally. They'll also get NCAA Final Fours. They'll get massive concerts. They'll get political conventions. They'll get, UFC and WWE and, other major events at the new stadium in Arlington Heights. The fact that they don't have a location yet in Hammond speaks volumes to me. That tells me right away that they don't know what they're doing there in Hammond. Now, on the field, I trust Ben Johnson to know exactly what he's doing. I loved the addition of Dylan Thieneman in the draft. I thought that was really, really good. I think he's going to be an absolute monster this year as a rookie. I think he transforms Dennis Allen's defense. The one area that they haven't addressed yet is the defensive line, and that's the thing that scares me. Now, could you get Max Crosby for a second-round draft pick and a player to be named other than Caleb Williams, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, or, Kyle Monangai? Sure. Yes. Could you trade Gervon Dexter? Absolutely. Could you trade Grady Jarrett? Absolutely. Could you trade Montez Sweat? Absolutely. But you have to be willing to make that deal. And if you don't, that's on you. But the Bears have an opportunity here to get better. And if they're able to make some kind of a deal to get a better defensive line, they need to do it. They've got to do it. Otherwise, I think the one area that they wanted to address this offseason is going to be the weakest link on that team. Linebackers, you've gotten better. Secondary, you've gotten immensely better with the addition of Kobe Bryant and Dylan Thieneman as your safeties. You're getting Jalen Johnson back healthy. Hopefully Kyler Gordon healthy. Tyreek Stevenson. So the Bears have an opportunity here. Not to mention their offense that's already good. Now you're adding onto it a center in Garrett Bradbury and or Logan Jones from Iowa, their draft pick. Sam Roush, another tight end from Stanford, who is very similar to Cole Kmet. Good blocker, good catching tight end, can run. Colston Loveland, I think, is going to be an absolute massive star in this league, as is Roma Dunze and Luther Burden. I think that Kyle Monangai is just scratching the surface. I think I look for a big year out of DeAndre Swift. And honestly, I look for a bigger year out of Caleb Williams. I don't want to see the cardiac Bears. And Reagan, I agree. This is their window. You've got Caleb on his rookie deal. And look, the reason why they haven't really struck any deals with anybody is because they know what they have to spend with Caleb. Now, let's not make any mistake here. This is a big year for Caleb Williams. He did not pass for 4,000 last year. Close, but did not. I think this year he does it. But this is a big year for Caleb. He's got to show progression in Ben Johnson's offense. If not, if he struggles in Ben Johnson's offense this season, for whatever reason, I think there could be questions about Caleb Williams. I legitimately think that. Now, do I think Ben pulls the trigger? No. Do I think Ben pulls him out of a game? No. But do I think that there's a possibility that Caleb might struggle a little more this year? Absolutely. But so far, based on everything we've seen, or I've seen out of the OTA footage, they're faster in and out of the huddle, which is something they struggled with a year ago. Caleb looks to be more fundamentally sound so far. Now, granted, things change in games. I know that. Game speed is a hell of a lot different than OTA. But the fact that you have a quarterback, finally that you can trust. Now, you've got a running game. You've got really good weapons around him. You've got an improved offensive line. Can you win with him? Don't rush to sign him to a huge, massive extension. I agree, Reagan. But the problem is, if you don't sign him after this year or during the year, and he has a massive year and leads you to the NFC title game, you're going to be paying out the wazoo anyway. Why not pay him on the low right now a little bit? Incentivize him. That way he's got a second contract. Then, on the second contract, if you get to a Super Bowl and or win the Super Bowl prior to second contract, then you can pay him more. Then you won't have to worry about it because he will be your all-time franchise leader in every passing record possible. But it's a big year for Caleb Williams. Let's just call it what it is. And I think he's going to be up for it. I truly do. And I think he'll be up for the challenge in year 2 of Ben Johnson's offense. That's going to put a bow on this edition of the Last Row Podcast. Quick programming note. We will not be here Friday night or Saturday night. So we will have tomorrow night, Thursday, and then Sunday night. Due to prior commitments, I will not be here on Friday night or on Saturday night. But I look forward to talking to you all tomorrow night. Big thanks to I Know a Guy Remodeling and Forever Finds for their continued support. If you're with us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. That way you know when a new episode drops. Leave us a rating too if you don't mind. Make sure you check out our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com. That's where you can find links to all of our fantastic sponsors. And we will be back with you tomorrow night when breaking news changes everything. And until then, I'll see you in the last row.